Good morning, everyone. Good morning, and welcome back. Welcome back to another PorscheCooled Podcast, the podcast where we talk about all things Porsche. This is episode, wow, we're getting up in the numbers now. I think this is episode 37. I could be wrong. No, I think it is 37. So 37 episodes to date. If you haven't listened to all our episodes, you know where to find us. We are pretty much everywhere. If you can't find us everywhere, let me know, but I'm pretty sure now we're everywhere. We just got added to Amazon Podcast Music or something like that, I think is a new one. So we've just been added to that last week. So that's pretty exciting. Obviously, the main places to hear our podcast, where most people listen to it, is on Apple and on Spotify. But I also upload this to my YouTube channel, which is Michael Barth. Some of you know that already. Purely for people that want to listen to it on YouTube, and there's a few of you out there who say you enjoy it. Obviously, when it's on YouTube, it does have ads on the podcast. That's just how YouTube works, and it also helps support the channel. So there's not that many, but they do put ads through the podcast. I think I won't do a long introduction today. I think we'll get Steve through Zoom again. Like I said, we do this through Zoom. We'll talk about what's been happening. I did a bit of update on the. We'll do an update on the PorscheCooled stories, which started yesterday. The first one went up yesterday, which is going to be kind of like a regular thing. Not every Tuesday. Of course, when I say yesterday, I meant it went up on Tuesday. So it's currently Wednesday today in London. I'm still in London. I'm off to Bahrain on Saturday again. So the podcast will be recorded from Bahrain from next week. I've lined up a very special guest recording later today, which will air in the next few days, which is James from Auto Amateur. But like I said, I'm going to get Steve on the line and we'll talk about this together. So give me 1 second. We'll get Steve on Zoom all the way from Sydney, Australia. Okay, we're back. Steve has joined us by Zoom. He's in Sydney. Hi, Steve.
Howdy. Good evening. How's it going?
Good. Welcome back.
I'm like part of the furniture now, aren't I?
You are. Your PorscheCooled Podcast. I hear you're becoming famous too. People are contacting you and responding, which is good.
No. I'm still sorry to anyone that is trying to do something like that, but yeah.
All right, so a new episode. Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for the support. Thanks for listening. I was just saying to Steve before we started recording this podcast that we've had a lot of support in the last week. The last episode that we just put up, which was yesterday, which was on Tuesday, was the PorscheCooled Stories, number 1, with Nick from the UK. Nick talking about his Porsche 997 Carrera 4S. Did you enjoy
really good,
that?
I've got to say. Which is really good, I've got to say, to both you and Nick. It's really interesting. It's good to hear.
Mate.
Yeah. And I'm not just saying that.
Yeah, no, it seems to be a lot of people it's been, I can only see what downloads are. I don't really see that many comments because there's no comments, but people have downloaded it and people have listened to most of it. So I can actually see that in the stats that I have available. So that's good. I'm just got to get my microphone in the right spot because I seem to not be able to read my screen.
Yeah, it's not an easy thing to do on both sides. Like for you to kind of talk to, I know you've kind of hung out with Nick once, but talking to somebody that you don't know all that well and sort of trying to keep a flowing conversation that you can record. And then I know what it's like on the other side where it might not be your comfort zone to talk out loud which is being recorded and what you feel like is out in public.
Yeah, true.
Just sort of
true.
semi-checking yourself, if you know what I mean, because...
Yeah, you want to share as much as possible, but everyone wants their privacy too, so you have to keep a little bit secret.
Sort of, yeah. Yep.
In a way.
Yep.
But I think Nick did very well. So thank you, Nick, for being on number 1. He's number 1 of the PorscheCooled Stories. There's another one coming up. It's going to be James from Auto Amateur, who's a special guest. James has a lot to talk about, so I think that's going to be a good one.
Another English accent. Another English accent. Everyone calls you Michael Bath too.
Different region. Yeah.
You should introduce yourself as Michael Bath.
Are you making fun of James? He's going to get paranoid.
No, Nick said it. Nick says it as well, I think.
Well, that's the proper English pronunciation of Bath. So.
Yeah.
But you know, I don't.
But anyway.
Yeah, I don't say that. I say in the Aussie way, Michael Bath.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we should say that. If you haven't been to the podcast before, like I said, I'm Michael Barth. That's Steve. We talk about Porsche on this podcast. And I'm getting off track, Steve, because my head is somewhere else. Let me get back on track. Oh, I want to talk about something before we get started. I said thanks for the support. Thanks for Nick for doing that. It's great. And James is coming up. But I just want to talk about briefly, Steve, and you can just listen and comment if you feel like you have something to add here. But I just want to talk about why this podcast was started. And it's kind of turned into something a little bit different. And I just want to say this because of a comment that I received last week. And I'm not going to say where the comment was, but I just want to, just based on the comment. And Steve knows what comment I'm talking about.
Oh, okay. Yep, gotcha.
So this podcast, right, is always started off is just about liking Porsche, right? It's just about being enthusiastic about Porsche. And as you've always said as well, Steve, we're no experts. We're not automotive journalists. We're not car reviewers. We're just two guys, two mates talking about Porsche life, say, Porsche stories, our Porsche journey. And it's always been like that, even from when I did that first YouTube video back in 2016 now. Trying to be sensible. It's always been about that, right? So that's what we are. And the Porsche, and we're not experts, we're just enthusiasts. And the PorscheCooled owner stories in a way is growing on, is extending from that. I don't know if that's the right choice of words, but it's an extension of that as well. It's making the conversation broader, bigger, and giving a different perspective to what Steve and I have, right? Because we're both 997 owners. And, in saying that, we own 997s. I don't see why someone that owns a 997 or a 996 can't talk about air-cooled or can't talk about 991s. You know what I mean? We all read similar articles. We all look at the similar things online. And we're just chatting. Sometimes we get it wrong. Sometimes the information is not 100% correct. But that's the conversation we're having with you. And it's just like if Steve and I were chatting in a cafe and sometimes, we're talking shit and sometimes we're not. True, Steve?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. It's hard to get it. It's hard to kind of get it right. And none of this is scripted, like I try to kind of roughly kind of get my thoughts straight. But as you can tell, I'm a mumbler. So half the time I kind of get it wrong as well.
No, I think...
So I sort of feel... that I can't always be 100% factual about something because I'm not a car journalist. I don't have a press release in front of me as well, so I'm not kind of trying to, I'm not sort of trying to kind of make it out as if, again, like I'm an expert or I know everything about, whatever the topic is. So
no, but I want to add to that because your insight is invaluable. You know what I mean? You're talking about somebody who has had a 911 since, I don't know what year it was, Steve. 2000, is it? Shit, I don't even know what year it is.
I don't know.
20 years? More than 20 years.
More than 20 years.
Yeah, for over 20 years, Steve has owned 911s. He's owned, 3 generations. He's owned air and water cooled. He's owned a GT, a GT3. Or is currently driving a GT3. So, I think, for Steve's value to this podcast is his insight is much better than mine. He has the experience with it. You know what I mean? And a lot of the things that I learned, a lot of the things I've learned about Porsche, did come from you, from talking to you and picking your brain. You know what I mean? Obviously now I look at other things and read other things as well, but it was when I was buying the car and
sure.
Even when I was thinking about buying a car in 2004 911 when I never did, it was getting the insight from you. I remember you first told me about the G50 gearbox in the Carrera, which I didn't even know about. Make sure you get an 88, 89 model with the G50. I remember you were telling me. That's
I got that from my uncle.
Yeah, and that's when they were 25,000. And I didn't buy one, 25,000 Australian. So that there's insight there. I hope this is not getting misunderstood what I'm trying to say. But anyway, that's the point of the podcast. We're not always factually correct. We do actually do research. We don't have a script as such. Steve and I kind of find it better when we have a basic idea of what we're going to talk about, and we find that the conversation is much richer when we just kind of free flow and we just talk about things. So sometimes there's ums and ahs, but in general we try to make it so it's more interesting to you guys, and it's not like a Q&A, like a backwards and forwards, scripted podcast. And I think that's the value of PorscheCooled, and that's where we sort of. And the other thing,
yeah, I get what you're saying. It's sort of like,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do, because we don't have access to sort of the type of information, etc., that journalists would have. Neither of us are in that sort of realm as well. So we're deliberately sort of trying to play in a different space or sort of talk about things with a different perspective to that.
Yeah, our perspective is of the normal Porsche owner, of the average guy, that might have one Porsche, he might have two. You know what I mean? That, and it's about sharing information, and that's kind of what we do. And, the 996
that it's recorded.
Yeah, and it's recorded. But the 996 episode, the 996 episode, that episode that we did two episodes, was it last episode or two episodes ago, 2 weeks ago? Mm-hmm. That episode was never meant to be a review of the 996. It was just our opinion talking about the 996. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And I've never ruled out the 996 as a second 911. I always say that the GT3 is good, the turbo is good. I still like the 4S even with IMS issues. We're not doing a review of the car. These podcasts are not a review of a car. They're just us talking about what we find interesting about the 996 in our opinion.
Yeah, sure. Probably the other thing is I apologize if I give people bum steers, but it's like a conversation I'm having with Michael, but it just so happens to be recorded.
In saying that, Steve, the information about exhaust and the information about, things you've done to your car, I think are very valuable. And people have reached out to me and said that, things that I've said as well. People find them very valuable. People in the UK, suppliers have messaged me and said, as someone heard something on your podcast and they came to see us. I'm not going to mention who that was, but you know who I'm talking about. You know what I mean? So it helps people, and it just gives people a direction to go in. You know what I mean? You have to do extra research, sure, but we're just talking about what interests us. But the other thing about why this podcast is special to me is because now I am trapped. Obviously I do live in Bahrain at the moment, even though I'm in London. But as Steve knows, I'm trapped at the moment, and I can't get back to Australia due to the rules that Australia has done with its citizens. It's made it very difficult. And when we're in Sydney, Steve and I might not go for a drive every week, but we talk about, we'll meet up, we will go for a drive, every other week or whatever. We still have that opportunity to do that. Now, the fact that I can't do that and Steve can't do that, this podcast for us is a good catch up, and during this pandemic, which still exists, and Steve and I were talking about this, I think before last week's episode, before we recorded, but for us, it's actually a good way to catch up, and it's kind of, It puts you back on the ground and stabilizes you because, Steve and I can chat about Porsche and just, chat as mates and record it at the same time for you guys.
Yep. Agreed.
Okay.
I'd be going bonkers otherwise.
Yeah. So it's a good outlet. It's a good outlet for us. So anyway, PorscheCooled Stories, that's like I said, that's sort of the idea for that was to give a broader community sort of outlook, involve you guys in the story. People that listen to the podcast can come on and, I'll do an episode with them. At the moment, it's just me talking to you. And we do an episode talking about, your first memories of Porsche, etc. And like I said, the one that Nick did is very good. If you haven't listened to it, check that out. It's everywhere, as I say. What else? Oh, and then I'm just going to mention this, Steve, just very quickly. We are on Patreon. PorscheCooled is on Patreon. If you want to become a member of PorscheCooled on Patreon, you just go to patreon.com, search for PorscheCooled, and it comes up. And if you join as an exclusive member on Patreon, it helps support us. It helps support the podcast. You get early access. You get 24 hours early access to episodes. There will be private chats and live Q&As planned, but that's when we have a few more members. At the moment, we have 2 members. And every new member I will shout out in the podcast, which I have done for the past 2 members that have joined. So that's just an update on that if you want to become a member of PorscheCooled. So tomorrow, like I said, today is Wednesday here. Steve and I are recording this in the morning. Tonight, I'm going to record an episode with James from Auto Amateur. He's going to reveal the color of his Project 996 car, Steve. He's actually decided he's going to reveal it on the podcast.
Green?
He said he changed the color. He said he was having problems with barley blue or barley blue in his last podcast. Which
that's right. You said that it was... Sorry, because I don't follow... Sorry, James, I don't follow him, but I thought it already was blue. Yeah.
I don't know. He said he's changed it. I don't know what he's changed it to. He also said that they're going to sell that car, and he's already had people that are wanting to buy it. So we'll pick James's brain when I talk to him on the podcast today, which will probably go up... I say it's going to go up on Tuesday, but we'll see We'll see what James has to reveal and see if we want to put it up earlier. But at the moment, it's going up next Tuesday. But anyway, he's busy, and I think the podcast with James is going to be like tough to keep it in under 1 hour because I'm sure he has a lot to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so update on my 911, Steve. I just got an email just this morning about my leather parts. They have not been sent yet. The guy in the UK that was made them, Linas, he's had a few personal issues, so they haven't been sent, but apparently he's going to send that today. So like I said, it's no big deal for me. It's just I can't install them anyway, so they're just going to be sent to Sydney. I asked Steve during the week to do a check for me because I'm getting a little bit concerned, and I did mention this previously. I'm getting a little bit concerned about my car being stored and not being driven, and the fact that now it's almost been... I left Sydney in January, I think it was, end of January, Steve. So what's that, 8 months already? So it's been 8 months. Yeah. This is the longest I've ever left the 997 without driving it.
Yep.
Usually the maximum was when I came back at Christmas, which was only like 5.5 months. So this is the latest. So then I've been thinking, should I put it into storage, into proper professional storage as at Auto House in Sydney? I think they're full up, aren't they, Steve, you said?
Yeah, they're full up, but... Scott, who takes care of that sort of thing, he's also the partner in the sales side of the business. I've known Scotty for a while, so just kind of gave him a tingle and asked him on your behalf just if there might be anything coming up, which he said there's a possibility of it.
Yeah.
I should throw into the fact that obviously I can still help you with all of this too if you need a hand. But completely understand.
The thing though was, like I said to you, I'm worried that it's not being driven in that amount of time. And other people have sent me messages saying, "Aren't you worried about your car?" But from what Scott told you, it's not that big a concern.
And I won't sort of completely misquote him because it was sort of like a fairly kind of casual conversation. But
yes.
So I just sort of had to kind of recap that you'd been away for that amount of time and the car was just sort of sitting there, blah blah blah. He just sort of said to me that like 997s sitting for that amount of time, it's not like the end of the world kind of thing. Like the trick to, because I sort of said to him like if we need to kind of go and get it serviced and the rego done and all that sort of stuff, that I would be the one sort of going over to to take your car and then drive it across to them. So like any tips, and he was just explaining, you just got to make sure you kind of get the car hot. Then you check for kind of basic leaks, in the coolant and everything else. I'm sure you'd be asking me to check your power steering too, because you had a little kind of weep there, didn't you?
Yeah, so the steering rack has that leak, yeah.
Yeah, but
which is the reason why... sorry.
Scotty is very, very knowledgeable. I know he's sort of... you probably should kind of get him on the podcast, but he knows a lot about it. But just generally, he sort of said, it should be okay. Like just, turn the car over, get it all heated up, then, drive it sort of thing, you'll be able to tell. But just in general, in terms of kind of storage... for the fact that, if potentially your car hasn't been started and driven for, say it's like 12 months, it's not the end of the world. Like,
right.
The car should be okay kind of thing. So.
Well, that's good to know because it's probably going to be longer than 12 months by the way it's going at the moment. This is the thing. I think it's going to get close to 18 months by the time it goes because at the moment I'm almost giving up hope.
But I can sort that for you. And then I just sort of asked the question in terms of, well, how often do you think, it really needs to kind of be turned over or driven as such? And I think he sort of said, look, once a month or every couple of months would be okay. So
yeah, it's very weird about
if it was me, I know if it was my car, I'd be kind of going, or even with my car, I sort of try to drive it maybe once a week or once a fortnight kind of thing. So
it's very weird though because people say that it's not good just to turn the car over. If you go onto, I think I saw it on Rentless, some thread or somewhere that people are saying just to start it up is not actually good. You should actually drive it. You shouldn't just start it up and then turn it off. See, I don't know. There's so many stories out there. It's very hard to know what is right and what is wrong, right?
Was that for an air-cooled car or a water-cooled?
Good point. I'm not sure. Maybe that's
because
air-cooled.
See, that was one of the things when I was talking to Scotty. I think like he knew who you were because he'd obviously contacted him before. But
Yes,
he
I did.
said he sort of said, "Oh, is this a 3.2?" And I said, "No, this is a 997." And he said, "Oh, okay, yeah. Like obviously the penny dropped a little bit in terms of just reminding him. So perhaps like with an older car, it's more crucial to kind of turn it over.
Right.
Or with an air-cooled car, I don't know.
So it's air cooled.
Could be, I don't know.
Right.
Again, don't quote me.
Yeah, it was just unfortunate. I mean, I tried to organise that at Christmas and there was nothing available. And then I think a few days after I arrived back in London, he said one's come up. So it was kind of like, just like that, you just miss things. It seems to be my luck at the moment. But, thinking about the car, Steve, thinking about the 997 and thinking about, the issues when you're not there. Here I am thinking, wouldn't it be good to have two 911s in Sydney? But, Tasha tells me, my wife tells me, she said, what are you going to do with it if you're not there? You can't even manage the one you have, And I have to say, it's kind of true, right? I'm kind of being a little bit, you know what I mean?
Don't fall for that trap. What are you doing then?
I mean, is that a trap? I know Nick will be listening to this and he'll be saying, that's why you want to get one in the UK. So I know I don't think I can manage two 911 Sydney. And then I had a really crazy thought yesterday. I don't know. I have these crazy thoughts, and I mentioned to this before, that if I sell my 997, which I said didn't want to
Don't do it.
If I sell my 997 and buy a 912 or a 964 or a 993 or a 993, Carrera 2 964 or Carrera S 993, which would be probably too hard to find. But then I'd have to sell my 997, right? But it still doesn't solve the problem of not being in Sydney and having to deal with it. And people ask me, how come you haven't bought a 912 yet, or how come you haven't? It's purely because I'm not in Australia and I wanted to get the second car in Australia. And how can I do that when I can't get back to the country? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so that's kind of where it is. And I think just getting a 912 purely as your only Porsche, I think would be a big mistake. I think the 912 is something that you would get, a classic 911 like that, a 65, 70 911, Steve. It's something that you would get if you had another more modern 911.
Absolutely.
I don't think you could just live with it. You know what I mean?
I think you'd miss. I think, and I'm because I've never driven a car that old, as in a 911 that old. I'd imagine that you'd miss the kind of proper performance of your car or anything of that generation or around about that.
And the problem with the 912...
Because I reckon you can... Sorry, go again.
No, but the problem with the 912 too, being a four cylinder and being not that powerful, you know what I mean? It's more about the experience, I think. I think a 964 or a 993 would be okay, but I think a 912 you couldn't just have that as your only 911.
I was thinking about that actually because
only Porsche, sorry.
I remember when I had my 964 and 993, like again, this is 20 something years ago. They obviously felt quick for the time. The 993, when I first got it, was still a quick car. By the time, like 12 years later, you're probably kind of getting smoked by, Golf GTIs on the street. Still felt quick in terms of the experience, but you'll never really be able to kind of keep up with it. But I guess I'd love to kind of jump back in a 964 and 993 now, but I'm guessing that it probably doesn't feel all that powerful now.
Really? We should do what Zuckerman and Spike do. We should buy a 964 and share it. Then you can look after it.
Yeah, we could, but we need Spike and Zuckerman's income.
Yeah, I know. Well, people think we're rich, but we're not.
No. Well, I know I'm not. If you've been hiding something, that might be different, but...
I'm not saying anything. Yeah. All right. So, yeah, that's kind of where... That's just a bit of an update. That's kind of where my head is, so it's all...
Well, I keep saying it to you. I'll say it on a podcast. I can still help you with the car thing in terms of... Even if you don't get to the storage bit, I can still kind of go over and turn your car over and all that sort of stuff. That's fine.
Thanks, mate.
Hard. No problems.
All right. So that's a bit of an update on my Porsche dilemma. I don't know if it's a dilemma, it's just a Porsche, what I think about during the week. Let's talk about you, Steve.
I can understand you kind of worrying about it, but...
I worry about everything at the moment.
Yeah, I think everybody does, mate.
Did you drive the car? Did you drive your GT3 this week or not really?
I went for a quick... I met some friends today for a quick outside coffee. I'm still fairly conservative in my approach to pandemics and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. But I just drove to Balmoral.
Okay.
Sat out in the open and just sort of met some friends.
Oh, nice
The drive
down
wasn't
there.
that great. I don't know why. Just a bit of traffic and everything in Sydney. But the weather's warming up.
Balmoral I love Balmoral. For people that don't know, Balmoral is on the harbour in Sydney. It's a very exclusive area. It's a very beautiful place near Mossman
Yeah,
in
it's a
Sydney.
beautiful spot.
We used to swim there all the time. Tash and I used to always go swimming there for a long, long time when we lived on the north side.
We actually went to Cindy and I went out on Sunday to Bowral though.
Oh, nice.
We took the freeway, but
You took the GT3?
no, we had baby with us. So
Oh,
we were in
that's
the
right. You
Macan.
have to take the Macan Turbo.
Yeah.
Steve doesn't do things in halves. It's GT3 Turbo. No basic
right.
models here.
It's quiet. I said it to Cindy as we were driving along. She loves it, which is great. Like, it's her car. But just by comparison, you're just kind of driving down the freeway and it's just so quiet.
Wait till the electric one comes out.
Yeah, it's just such a different experience compared to the GT3.
Would you buy an electric Macan?
I probably have no choice by the time that we kind of get rid of this Macan, right?
Yeah. Macan, is it? Sorry, I say Macan. You say Macan.
I don't know, whatever.
Bath.
But you're Michael Bath. Yeah, but I probably wouldn't. I suppose by the time the electric Macan comes out, it'll no doubt be sort of based on a Taycan. So, like, I wouldn't buy a first generation Taycan.
Yeah.
But
there's a good review actually on Marcus, what's his name? MKBHD, whatever it is. Marcus Brownlee, the tech guy. He did a review.
Yeah.
He's a Tesla owner, right? He's owned a few Teslas, I think. He did a review. It's up. I think it came up last night on his thing where he does a few car reviews. And he reviewed the Panamera Turbo S, or not Panamera, Taycan Turbo S. I think it
Taycan,
was.
yep.
Yeah, and he said it's, obviously it's different to the Tesla, and it's quite a good watch actually. I would watch it if you haven't watched it. It's actually quite a good watch because it's a good perspective from someone who is a very big Tesla fan. But basically, I mean, Porsche's got it right. I mean, people are giving them a lot of credit for the Taycan. I mean, it's getting a lot of respect. So, I mean, I think they're onto
Interesting
another winner.
because there was that Lucid American sort of high-end electric car that got launched and got lots of press, and then I suppose once all the Volkswagen Group variations of a Taycan come out, it'll be interesting to sort of see how they're all kind of slightly different, or maybe because the electric car platform is just that, like a platform. I wonder how close they'll all be to each other in terms of the experience.
I think it's in the problem is, and this is well discussed everywhere, is that the Porsche charging network is not up to the same level as Tesla.
Yeah.
And how could it be when Tesla's been around so long? Tesla's superchargers are everywhere. In the UK here, it's just so easy if you had an electric car. I don't know if it's still that easy in Australia, but here it's so easy. And his comment actually on that review was the fact that, that's probably the only downside, that the fact that Porsche doesn't have the same network yet as what Tesla does. And apparently Tesla originally said that they would let Porsche use their superchargers or let any other company use their superchargers. Apparently Tesla is not doing that. And then he said there was some video on YouTube that someone had worked out some hack, because you can't just go and charge at a Tesla supercharger or your Porsche for some reason. I don't know the technical reasons. But there's some video on YouTube which he flashed up, which apparently someone was at a Tesla supercharger charging their Taycan. So
It's just early days.
So they've worked out the hack.
Once Volkswagen Group kind of, like they're investing so much money into electric cars. There was that thing in the press about Rimacs being...
Yeah. Well, their technology is Rimac, right? Porsche's technology is Rimac.
Well, and they were share, like a sort of fairly major shareholder, but now they've taken like a massive... What is it? Rimac is sort of... They're swapping Bugatti for all of like 49% of their own company.
They're going to buy Bugatti. They're going to own Bugatti. Rimac is going to own
Which
Bugatti.
is genius. Such a smart kind of move. Volkswagen Group is basically going to, obviously, I reckon, just smash electric cars in the next few years. So that weighting towards Tesla, maybe their kind of advantage might not be quite so great when it comes to charging and stuff.
Yeah, but Porsche tying up with Rimac was pretty smart, right? Because their technology was pretty good their technology was good, and obviously there was some deal done where, I'm guessing there was some deal done in early days where they come in and do the platform, and then I reckon that Bugatti thing was always going to happen. I reckon that was always part of the big plan. But does that mean the Bugatti then is going to become more of an electric supercar? They're going to get rid of the W12 or whatever it is, and it's going to be a electric hypercar.
But then when you think about it, every car is going to be like that.
True.
However, I don't know how long that is, but
next 10 years, they say. Next 10 years is going to be where it's going to happen.
It's funny, we're getting old, eh? It goes quicker than you think. It goes much quicker than you realise.
Yeah, cars will be like steam engines soon. It'll be like people riding horses in the 1800s. Yeah. Porsche is like a brand of horse. Porsche 911 is like a horse. What horse did you used to drive? Okay, so what are we talking about?
The brown one.
Yeah. The other thing we wanted to talk about today, we want to talk about the PCM dilemma in the 997 and in the 996. I guess in the older generations of 911s. People who own classic 911s as well have the radio, the 993 and 964. Everyone knows, and this was... Actually, before I get into that, I mean, as I said last week, Steve, my PCM is pretty much useless. I can't do calls on it anymore because 2G was turned off, and I used to use a SIM card, as I said. The 997 original PCM, I think mine is 2.1. I think I call it 2.1 from memory. I think so. I upgraded the maps on that when I first bought the car. I bought maps. They may not have been OEM maps. They might have been some dodgy maps from some guy in Queensland, but I did buy maps for the car. Some guy that was selling maps, I don't know. Because the maps at the time were last updated, I think it was 2014 or 2015 when I bought them in 2017. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And I think I checked recently, and I don't think the maps have even been updated since then, because the maps are pretty hopeless.
So can I ask, did you actually ever use your navigation?
Yeah, no, I haven't. I bought the maps. I think they only cost me very little. There's a guy in Queensland that does all these things. I think they were like $100 Australian or something for the
I know what you're saying. I did the same thing for my 1M.
Yeah, it comes on a CD and it's all looks like legitimate, but it's not legitimate, I don't think. But I updated it, and then our street in Sydney where we live actually turned up to be correct. Like it was not even right. They couldn't even find the address because it didn't exist at that time. There was no building there, so it didn't exist or something. I don't know how because it was built before 2015. But there was a lot of weird things. I think I tried it once and it was so bad I just didn't use it again anyway.
Yep.
Anyway, when I was talking to Nick in the podcast, I think I might have mentioned he's got the Mobridge system, and I know that the guy in Sydney that that installs it. I think I'm going to do as a temporary measure for me to make my car more accessible. I do like to be able to have the ability to take calls every now and again in the car. I know you can stream. I thought
Nick's perspective was interesting.
Yeah, Nick said he doesn't take calls, not important.
Doesn't talk in the car. It's like, wow.
Yeah.
You're disciplined.
Yeah, I know. But if you have to, you have to, right? So I think I would get the Mobridge. I think I'd get the Mobridge, and I think I would just do that as a stopgap. And it's a stopgap basically until Porsche announce this new system that they're doing, which has got Apple Play, Apple CarPlay, and Android Auto, which is, what do they call it? Porsche Classic Communication
PCCM
Management.
Plus.
Yeah, so it's either PCCM or PCCM Plus. PCCM Plus is for the 986 and 996. It's not yet available for the 997.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that, Steve, is because the 997 isn't at classic status yet, where the 996 is.
Yep.
Based on Porsche's timeline, how they did it, the 996 is now a classic 911.
Yep.
So anyway, I was just looking into that. I mean, there's a really good video. I mean, obviously this Porsche system is expensive, right? It's not cheap. It costs a lot. I do like how it's OEM. That 911 guy, Lee, from Total 911, he installed one in his car. He said it's quite expensive. He loves it. I mean, I'm a bit crazy with certain things, that, but I would actually pay them extra money instead of getting an aftermarket system.
That's okay. I'll confess that I probably would consider it too. I know we're about to talk about what I've got in my car, but I'd consider it. It looks like the 996 version is heinously expensive. Like by the time you install it, you're up for what, $4,000 or something?
I think he said. That Lee said that it was somewhere like 4,000. Anyway, that 911 guy on YouTube, which is Lee, if you don't know him from Total 911, he did a review of it last week. So check that out. It's about the PCCM Plus because he's got a 996. It looks, I always thought this even from the pictures that Porsche released. It looks nicely integrated. There's a couple of odd things, but this is always going to happen when you put something in a Porsche that's modern into an old Porsche. There's going to be things that you have to like stick somewhere. The mic is on top of the steering wheel. Steve, you noticed that in the video. There's like a little mic. But I think
the
if you get
factory one is as well. It's just that there's not a little kind of thing that sort of looks like it's stuck on. The factory mic is in the same position.
Yeah, my steering wheel though has little holes underneath. I think it's inbuilt.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm interested that they couldn't take that panel off and put the mic underneath where the old mic used to be though, so it's more concealed. I mean, you know me with, I don't know, lumps and bumps everywhere kind of annoy me. And then there was that little square box on the right, near his right-hand drive, obviously, so it's on the right-hand side.
Oh, I thought that was really clumsy. You're right.
Near the dashboard. Yeah, it's a little box. I don't know what was it, 5 centimeters by 5 centimeters? And that's the GPS module, which has to go on the dash, stuck on the dash.
Oh, no, sorry. You're talking, that's the, is that the GPS, or it might be the digital radio antenna?
He said GPS module. I'm not sure if that's correct. But
okay, yep.
But you're right. This system does have DAB. It does have digital radio, right? So the system does have that. So there would have to be an antenna for that, I guess. So maybe the GPS module is, maybe the module is GPS and DAB. Maybe it's both.
I've got that on my aftermarket one, and it's like not the prettiest thing, but if you want it, you have to have something stuck to your windscreen, basically.
But his is not stuck to the windscreen. He's stuck it on top of the dash. I think if it was stuck in the bottom, I thought if it was stuck at the bottom corner of the windscreen on the driver's side, like at the right-hand drive, it's in the bottom corner. I think I would prefer that more than having it stuck on my dash. I don't know about having things stuck on dash. I know people do it with phone holders and stuff, but it always looks a bit messy. It looks very messy. The other thing which I always thought was odd too, and you can see it in his video, which is that little aux-in USB box, which is under the unit.
That's the bit that's very clumsy, yeah.
Yeah, and I think he made a very good point, actually, because Porsche's images and all their videos and everything, they always show it centered. I think you have to buy a little module as well, a little dash plastic bit as well. I think that has to be bought.
Well, he made the point about it. I didn't quite understand it because I don't have a 996, but there's obviously something originally in that slot, so then you're replacing it with like just the cavity, the tray, and then, which was a factory option if you didn't have a particular thing. It's probably something to do with the climate control or something like that.
Right.
So you're removing all of that to kind of put the cavity in, so then you can have that that extra box that gives you all your aux-in plugins and all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and I think
which is a little bit unfortunate.
Yeah, it's a bit clunky. It would be nicer if it was better integrated. I don't know. You think Porsche would have made like a little box or something where it was like flush or something. But I think what he's done is correct, because like I said, all the Porsche images show it centered in that console. He's put it more to the left or whatever, so his phone can sit next to it. I think that's the way to do it if you get them to do it. I mean, he had his installed.
Why wouldn't you plug it into the glove box or the center console though?
Yeah, why couldn't they wire it up to that? You think they'd actually?
I'm sure I'm asking a question that's really obvious, because with aftermarket stuff, that's pretty much where you plug everything in as well. But
yeah, if that's just that box, you should be able to put that box in your console and have it hidden.
Maybe the 996 one's probably
maybe the 996 is different,
narrower than
Maybe the 997 it will be though, because you've already got that module in there.
Yeah.
I mean, I think mine doesn't have a USB in mine though. I don't have that. Mine just has a charger.
Yeah, not as mine.
Yeah, I know some people have the other.
Mine, sorry.
Some people have the modern iPod connection kit, which was available as an option, which I think which is obsolete now.
Modern.
Yeah, at the time, the iPod module. And I think what was interesting too, it looks like it's Porsche's sort of got it. Done it right. I mean, the sound. I mean, he did a test on the microphone, and the sound was really clear. Apparently, when he called his wife. But I thought the cost is a big factor, Steve. And I'm sure in Australia it's going to be double this price. He said it took a full morning's work, and they the book time that Porsche puts in is 3.2 hours to install it, and it was £2,200 fitted for the plus version, the PCCM plus. So what's
that in Australian dollars? What's the conversion then?
What's that? 4.4. It's about 4,000 Australian dollars.
Yeah, which is expensive.
But
that's expensive.
You sell the car, you have the car. It's still, the little, and I agree, the little Porsche print on the top. It all looks very OEM. It looks like it was there before. Yeah. It looks integrated apart from that box that's underneath. If they didn't have that box, I think the other two things you could almost ignore. the microphone and the GPS box. But I think that little aux-in USB thing is a bit, maybe
They had they obviously had the same sort of retro mod thing for 993s and 964s, and that looks unreal as well. Like new kind of head units with all the kind of flashing lights and the kind of chrome plastic bits and pieces. They're never sort of integrated with the interior of those Porsches, and nor do they with a 996. So I can absolutely understand why you'd want to do it. Like my 993, I spoke about it before. I had a Becker head unit in there that had sort of like orange backlighting controls and all of that sort of stuff that kind of looked quite factory. So it was sort of palatable for that era of car, but and those Beckers became really sought after and really valuable once they stopped making them as well.
Right.
So you don't really have that many options when you're in that world. If aesthetically you kind of want it all to be in keeping. So it's a genius move from Porsche in terms of releasing that sort of product, but they're charging you a premium for it, because I'd love to know
who makes it.
Yeah, who actually makes it, and then obviously what's going on is that Porsche's customizing it, so it's got a little bit of sort of design features in terms of the industrial design of the unit itself is integrating into the look of your interior, and then I'm guessing that there's other little bits and pieces in terms of the software and the operating system are integrating with what was your original PCM. But
maybe it's easy to update because it's Porsche as well. Maybe they do updates on it. It's easier. Maybe that's
it's not like they're really building it from the ground up.
No,
because,
it'd be interesting I don't know who do Porsche use for all the PCM units. I wonder what company they use.
Well, they used to use Becker back
right.
in...
Oh, that's right.
But I don't think Becker make sort of systems anymore. I'm not sure who it is now.
I mean, like I said, it was a really good fit. And I mean, I think that's what, and we'll get onto that when we talk about your system, but he said there's obviously aftermarket systems for a third of the price. But aftermarket systems don't always look that well integrated. There are always some issues. And I think you overcome that with yours with the surround, but we'll get into that in a second. So anyway, that's just...
It looks good. That review
is
really worth watching.
Yeah.
Too. Like, I think it was quite... he pointed out all the bits that I was kind of curious about when I watched it. And it would get me thinking, once the 997 version kind of gets released as well, even at that price.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I would buy it. I would spend the money. I wouldn't hesitate.
I know you would.
I would do it straight away. I would do it straight away. I did read though that on some of the classic forums that some of the people that own 964s and stuff are not so keen on it. I've noticed there's quite a few 964s, 993s, and G series and stuff that people are putting in the new system, this PCCM system. But I think there's some older people that like the original radio. They like to keep it original. They still think it doesn't look original enough when you update it.
Yeah.
I think it looks pretty good when you see it. I know it's got the color screen and it's much smaller in the classics, but I don't know.
It's just a compromise. Like if you want that sort of functionality, if you want the functionality and you sort of want the convenience plus the ability to talk on the phone, to listen to, music that's not on a CD or a cassette.
Well, you
kind of have to sort of find a compromise somewhere.
Yeah, and your CD, you can't control your CD changer anymore, so your CD changer just becomes obsolete. And the autopilot feature that mine has, that Bose thing where, the sound adjusts depending on the engine or whatever, that thing, I don't even know if that even works. My Audi had that sort of same system, but apparently that doesn't work anymore. They can't be controlled once you change it over. And the only classic cars you can't get it for is the 356 and the Carrera GT. But apart from that, everything else that's in the classics, you can actually get an upgrade. So it's available to a lot of people. But it's very clever of Porsche. They're going to make a lot of extra money out of this for sure.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. But it is top dollar. So that's the Porsche alternative. Like we said, for the 997 at the moment, it's not available. I did hear through someone, I won't quote, who told me that apparently the 997 one is coming soon. But, soon to me, if Porsche gives classic status to cars over 20 years old, correct, Steve? I think that's how they judge it.
I'm not sure. I think you might be right, yep.
I think it's 20 years old. So that means that if they're doing one for the 997 and the 997 has to be classic status and the 997 launched in 04 means that it won't be to 24. So that's not soon to me. That's like 4 years away. So unless Porsche is going to release it anyway sooner, I mean, because they've realized how successful it is, it would be. I'm guessing it'd be pretty easy for them to do it for the 997 if they've done it for the 996. Okay, so that's it. So Steve, let's talk about. And I don't think we've talked about this in detail before. I think we just mentioned it in passing. Let's talk about your what you installed in your car, because you've got an aftermarket system. I can't remember the name of it.
It's cool.
So let's just talk about what you did. And
So my car came standard with exactly the same PCM 2.1 that yours did. And this was however long ago, 6-7 years ago when I picked up the car. I sort of lived with it for a while, but I did want to listen to music through my iPhone in the car, plus sort of take calls, etc., etc. So it's the same conundrum as everybody else. I reckon maybe the difference between a 997 and a 964 in terms of this whole upgrading thing is that it's easier to kind of to update it without sort of and make it look aesthetically okay. So basically I opted for a Pioneer. It's got different names around the world. It's a Pioneer AVIC system. I think it's F60 is the model I've got. So at the time it was brand new. It was sort of like it's a touch screen, so it's a full, I think, 7-inch screen. Pretty good kind of resolution even to this day. And the way that you kind of make it aesthetically integrate into the sort of dash or whatever you want to call it is you can buy kind of kits. So it's just like it looks similar-ish to sort of like an integrated system in a 991 where you've just got your touch screen and then the volcano grey plastic surround kind of matches perfectly pretty much. I don't think you could sort of tell that it's not actually like a Porsche part. There's some, look, from a looks point of view, there are some sort of extra buttons that obviously aren't exactly the same shape. There's a little Pioneer logo on it. So at the time, you could choose between Pioneer and Alpine. I don't think Kenwood had a system at the time.
Right. But Pioneer was the right one, wasn't it? When you bought it and you did the research, Pioneer was the better one. And I did remember reading about that on forums as well, that people were buying the Pioneer.
Yeah, and I don't think actually they've updated it too much since, because I kind of, just been sort of tinkering and having a look as well. The only difference between the model that I've got, I think they've updated a little bit, so there's maybe some extra connections, but I think the only thing that it's missing is wireless CarPlay. So I'm an Apple person, not Android, and that was one of the important things to me to kind of get CarPlay in the car. I just sort of, it's a lot more intuitive for me and easier to use, etc.
So that surround that you got that makes it more integrated, is that someone just makes it in exactly the same plastic and it's the same, it just makes it, because you can't use the actual Porsche surround. The Porsche surround is obsolete once you install something else.
No, because if you think about what was there at the time, like the system that you've got has like the number pad, down the left side and like a much smaller screen and all of that sort of stuff. So that whole unit slides out, and then you put the new head unit in, and there's a plastic trim piece that kind of clips over the top.
Yeah,
there's two different types. There is one that has like a white Porsche logo at the top for people that feel like they want another Porsche logo in the thing. Mine doesn't have that because shout out to Chris. Chris is the Porsche audio specialist in Sydney. He's the man. He's the guru. He only works on Porsches. Well, he works on other cars, but if you're going to get anything done from a audio system point of view to your car, Chris is the guy to do it, because he knows the cars inside out. He knows how to pull it apart without wrecking anything.
Yep, that's who I'm going to use for the Mo Bridge.
He knows how it's all wired.
That's who I'm going to use for the Mo Bridge due to your recommendation.
Chris sourced that surround for me, and he's a good guy. He's a lovely guy, but he knows his stuff. So So
the sound though, the sound quality. You think so everything's okay on that Pioneer, like the microphone, and you haven't had any issues with it?
Let me mumble a bit more at you, because there's a few other little factors in my car. So I go back to my 964 and 993 days. I had the 964 came with something really terrible, so I replaced it with something not quite as terrible. Autohouse actually introduced me to Chris, and then the speakers were shot, so I had the speakers upgraded then. And then when I bought my 993, it was the same sort of conversation. The original, was it the Blaupunkt in the 993 was on its last legs?
Yep.
So I put the Becker in, and then I upgraded the speakers at the same time. So in both those instances, on Chris's recommendation, I went with AVI speakers, which is a Canadian brand. Most people go for Focals or Dyne Audios, I think it is.
Right.
Like if you're a true audiophile. I did a little bit of a sort of, side-by-side sound thing, and Chris had a bit of a deal on it, etc. It's like, yep, cool. The AVI sounded good to me. So when I got to my GT3, I did the same thing. So not only did I swap out the head unit, but I upgraded the speakers, the mids and the tweeters in it. And I had a sort of portable kind of sub, like a sub that you can put underneath your seat. I pulled that from the 993 and I stuck that in the GT3.
Oh, did you?
So, yeah.
But didn't your
So you've never
GT3
noticed-
had Bose though, right? If it has Bose,
No,
it
it
has a
didn't.
sub. Oh, yours didn't have Bose?
Mine had, no.
Ah, okay. So mine's got Bose, so mine's already got that sub integrated, I guess.
Yeah, but I think even then, again, please don't quote me on this. I'm assuming like this kind of sub that I'm talking about is like a flat box that's, the size smaller than an A3 page.
Right.
And like a couple of inches thick sort of thing. So it's supposed to kind of be fitted underneath the seat.
Oh, so that's in your GT3?
It's sitting behind the passenger seat.
Huh.
Down on the floor, but you'd never notice it kind of thing.
Oh, right. I didn't know that.
Now, all of this is possibly... This is one of the conundrums that I had, which was you kind of realise with the GT3 there's less sound deadening. It's a noisy car. There's like engine noise, exhaust noise, transmission noise. There's noise everywhere. So there really isn't much point in terms of, trying to turn your cockpit into this amazing soundscape, because unless you start lining the doors with Dynamat and soundproofing and stuff. But, you're wasting your time if you're sort of trying to go the whole hog. And when you read on this sort of stuff up on Renlist, the classic response when somebody kind of goes, hey, I want to upgrade the audio in my GT3, everybody sort of says, why would you listen to the symphony, coming from the back?
Yeah. But when you're on the twisties, you don't have your music on, right? You usually have music on? No.
No.
Because you have the window down. You like your window down and you just listen to the sound of the engine. But when you're driving around the city, I mean, it still helps to have something better. Absolutely.
You listen to your podcast. You do talk on the phone, unlike diligent Nick. But yeah, so I kind of wanted it all to kind of sound better. And admittedly, the original system in the GT3 was shit. It wasn't a Bose system, and to be honest, no offense, but I don't actually think the Bose system sounds that great anyway. So I spent the money and upgraded the head unit, the speakers, put that extra kind of sub in it, and if you turn the car off and you sit in the car, it's actually pretty good.
Right.
Like if you just parked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially with your new exhaust.
Yeah. So yes, it's a bit of a waste of money, but from the functionality point of view, going back to the actual head unit, I can understand the whole kind of thing about wanting to keep your car, as it was from the factory and everything. But in terms of the way that it looks, it's not too bad,
No, I think yours looks. I think it looks good. I think it still looks good.
Yeah,
you've integrated it very well.
On a scale of 0 to 10, if 10 is factory, it probably is looks like about a 8.5 maybe.
The thing is, like you said, I think the main point is the logo of the brand, the Pioneer logo, and it's got little buttons, right? Some other buttons. So I think it's just that it's not in the same sort of design as Porsche because it has that logo and the buttons. But I don't know. That's what I was wondering, Stephen. That's why I thought I'd ask you. Like, have they updated it to make it look more simplified? Have they updated the system? Would you consider changing it after the last, how many years have you had it? 6 years or something, 5 years? Would you update the system, and would that be but would it be an easy change? This is the thing. Do you think it'd be an easy change? Would it just be a swap in, swap out because everything else is already set up now?
Yeah, so it's funny that you say that, because I actually have been, because I've got too much time on my hands, and I constantly look at that. I kind of look at what the latest offerings from, Kenwood, Pioneer, Sony, etc., to sort of see like what the difference in the head units are, and all of that sort of stuff. But I tell you what, like this model of Pioneer that I've got, it's got everything in it. Like nothing's kind of outdated. The CarPlay is obviously linked to your phone, so it all works really seamlessly. It does actually have a nav system in it, but I don't use it.
So the only update, the way to update the system is just basically through Apple CarPlay, is it? You don't have to update any other firmware in the system? Are there any other updates? Do you have an app for the Pioneer that updates the system as well? Or yes.
So it's got its own operating system, and it's got its own nav in it, so you can pay for map updates and stuff like that. But because the way I use it is that you plug your phone in, then you're basically using everything off your phone. So I'm using Waze to kind of navigate with.
Yeah.
I'm using, messages, and everything else is basically through CarPlay. So, to be honest, like you'd argue that the way of the future for kind of car infotainment, or whatever you want to call it, really should just be, you've got a screen there, you plug your phone into it, and then you're basically using your phone on a big screen. Like, there's no need for anything else, really.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's amazing.
Somebody else has sorted that out. But.
I mean, to have Waze on it is good. I mean, I like Waze. Waze is actually, I think, I don't know, a lot of people use it now, but they've quickly become quite good at what they do. I mean, I know they have something to do with Google as well, or Google owns part of them or whatever, but
I think so, yeah.
But in the Middle East, Waze is invaluable, because I mentioned this to you before when we were chatting, that in Bahrain a lot of roads just end and become dirt and then end up in the water or whatever, or there's just no road anymore. Google does not know. And also the roads have road numbers, like road 1028. So when you're getting directions, it's going turn into road 1028, turn right into road 1051. And Google gets completely confused, and it takes you down these streets in the back of, Bahrain, where it's so narrow and you can't get your car out of there again. You know what I mean? Like when you're in the older part. So Waze is actually really good. I mean, that's what I mean. I would like to have that in my car. I really would. But I think I'm going to wait until they bring out the Porsche version. But I was just wondering if you were going to update yours, because I wasn't sure how much it's changed. And I guess it doesn't change that much, because as long as the screen is good, right? The maps come from TomTom or whoever they come from. If the Apple is updated by Apple, then as long as the screen is still good and your microphone's still good, you don't really need to change it.
Yeah, and so exactly what you just sort of said. To my understanding, I think the microphone, which is a Pioneer sort of thing, which is then stuck on, above the steering wheel, just like the one that you sort of mentioned in Lee Sibley's review. It's exactly the same. I think the quality of it's quite good. The sound quality, to me, there's people that are massive audiophiles, but the sound quality is more about the speakers than it is really about the head unit. I don't have an amplifier as well. It's a direct connection from speakers. I think my car came with an amp, but I think Chris ripped it out.
Right.
I shouldn't get too technical, but I think there's a thing like different 997s have different sort of systems. When you have Bose and this and that and everything else, the wiring is slightly different. So I know it wasn't a small job for Chris to kind of do the install, but as you're suggesting, like if I think, for example, if I wanted to now update it to a more a newer kind of aftermarket head unit, or even if the PCCM Plus for 997 comes out,
so you would change it to
that it might be set up.
You would definitely change to the OEM, possibly.
Yeah, possibly.
Cool.
I don't think.
Maybe we can get a group discount.
Yeah, maybe too. I suspect that, to be honest, I suspect that the Pioneer is that good that there's probably not that. I probably wouldn't gain that much more out of it. It might probably just be more the looks, but
yeah. I think that's all it would be. That's what I was getting onto. I think it's only if it becomes more simple, maybe like a simple motor, looks more integrated, I guess. But it's integrated enough now, really. It's not. It's just the Pioneer logo, but no matter what you have. And I noticed a lot of people do the Sony one. I noticed a lot of 996s that are up for sale in Australia. When I look at them, they say it's got a Sony head unit or an Alpine, but a lot of them seem to do Sony.
Yeah. The one thing I would, at the time I remember when I bought it, because the head unit was brand new, like it had only been released to the market when I sort of decided to take the plunge, but it has connections to put a rear-facing camera and a front-facing camera if you really want it.
Right.
I wouldn't have minded a reverse camera, but because my car's a club sport with a roll cage and everything, it sounded like a nightmare for Chris to kind of get in there. He said he could do it, but to kind of wire the car up to attach the
it's a lot of wiring.
Camera sounded.
Yeah, I saw a video where they were doing it on something during the week.
James?
Yeah, so, that's right. JWW
trying to
on an Aston Martin where they took the panels out. It looks like just a nightmare to put cameras in. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm happy with the beeping sound. I think it's fine. I kind of like how it's a bit old school.
Yeah.
So how much? So based on the price now, I mean, it's very hard to work because this is a long time ago. But it cost you a couple of grand, right? Australian or more?
I think the Pioneer head unit was probably, I don't know, I managed to kind of get a pretty good deal on it, but I think it was about $1,400 for the head unit itself.
Plus installation, so probably about 2.5 or something.
Yeah, speakers, then throw speakers into the mix, like good speakers too.
So it adds up.
Actually, whoever bought my 964 and my 993 got themselves like a great sound system. Like I sunk so much money into those speakers.
I should
have had the foresight to pull them out.
Because when you sold your 1M, you took everything off it, didn't you?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, Steve used to own a 1M, to everyone listening, and he macked it out like beautifully. It had like the proper race seats and steering wheel. Like he put so many mods into it. And this is when he owned the GT3. This is his second car. But it looked absolutely fantastic. Yeah, and then he had to sell it to buy beer for his wedding.
Something like that.
Just joking.
Just to round that out, so if you were asking whether or not it was a worthwhile thing for a 997, like I really do get the conundrum about factory versus not, but I would say if you want to talk in the car and you want to use CarPlay and everything, I reckon it's worth it. Would I do it again? Yeah, I'd do it again. I'd rather do that than go Mobridge, but
yeah. Well, so you think I'm silly? I mean, Mobridge I think is going to cost probably $1,500 or something at least. I don't know. I mean, I was going to do it as a stopgap. I don't really want to. I don't know. Maybe I need to look into the aftermarket systems like you have. Maybe I need to look into it more closely. I don't know. Like I said, I did get a message from someone saying that the 9971 was coming out soon, and they appeared to get inside information, and they're in the industry. So, and maybe that is true. It'd be good to know. If anyone knows that, please send me a message and let me know, because that would be good to know for Steve and I, because Steve then can update.
I should have said actually. So when I at the time that I did the upgrade and everything, I obviously went to Chris, who I knew from, he worked on my previous two cars, so I kind of picked his brains about it. And sort of, like, I think my first instincts was probably, again, it was Mobridge or Denison. Just from memory, I'm pretty sure Chris said to me, for us, Mobridge is better because it's actually, it's an Australian company and based in Melbourne. So he said he knows the guys and he gets kind of pretty good support from them. So he found Mobridge to kind of just be a better sort of thing from his perspective.
They never really pushed it any further, did they? They kind of were like the leaders there and they did it. And then it never changed. I don't know what they could change, but I'm just saying it's like nothing really. It just sort of sat there. Like, are they still actually, I'm guessing they're still operating, but surely they mustn't be making that much money. I mean, they do other cars as well, right? But I don't know.
But it would have been capped at, like, how many 997s are there?
Yeah, exactly. And
then a lot less than Corollas kind of thing. So why would you kind of
and then people want color screens and they want all that now. They don't just want the integration. Steve can now see the thing going behind the back of the window, the workman fixing the facade in our building.
Your stalker. But to that point, with the Mobridge, I remember at the time for me, which is probably what you're kind of pondering as well, it's like, if it was like couple of $100, then yeah, for sure I'd go and do it. But
that's the
because
problem.
it's quite expensive, like, and you, when you get to it, talk to Chris as well. But he'd probably say similar things, which I've just sort of explained myself, which was, well, for not that much more, you can kind of get this system, which yes isn't completely factory, but you get so much more functionality and it sounds so much better, blah blah blah. Your choice kind of thing.
Yes.
It's just because Mobridge is expensive.
All right. I mean, there's options out there, but I think when you look at the Porsche PCCM Plus cost, I think it's probably pretty worth it. I mean, if it comes out for the 997, it seems like even aftermarket systems you're going to be spending. I think it's going to be more than half, isn't it? If you get an aftermarket system, I think it's going to be if you get a good system.
Take a guess. What do you reckon? What do you reckon this PCCM Plus is going to be?
I don't know if it's 4,000. If it works out to be about 4,000 fitted in Australia, I guess an aftermarket system you would probably get fitted for 1,000 less. Maybe 1,000 or 1,500 Australian dollars less, but for that amount of money, you already spent 3/4. Isn't it worth it just to get the OEM version? I noticed what Lee said on his installation, actually, how he liked that trip computer that was in the PCM. And I have to admit, I use mine every now and again too. Not all the time.
I never used
every
it.
now and again, I have it on and I look at it. I do actually. That's one of the few things I view out in that thing. To see how many miles I've done and stuff. But I don't know if I'd miss it that much. It kind of makes sense that they wouldn't have it in the new one, but he reckons he missed it because that was the only thing that was missing. But
so
anyway,
I lost all that functionality, and I think a GT3 came with a tiny bit extra stuff as well, which I've lost. But again, like if I ever sold the car and you wanted to turn it back to standard, I've got the old
you've got your original,
which
right?
worked perfectly.
It's
so
when you
can
had
just
the
turn it all
when you
back.
had the chrono pack, you had all those additional settings, so you could set wiper speed and on off and stuff, right? Things that they could only do through the dealer. If you had that option, I think with the chrono, you could actually set extra things.
But to be honest, I reckon the only time you really look at all of that type of stuff is, the first week that you've got the car and you're sort of playing with it and you're reading the manual.
Yeah, that's what I was doing when I read the manual from front to back overnight.
Yeah, exactly.
But my car doesn't do the thing where it automatically locks after a certain amount of time. Does yours do that? When you hit 20 kilometers, the doors lock?
That's a setting in your in that PCM.
Not in mine, though. You can't set it. You have to go to the dealer and get them to do it.
Okay.
Mine's a dealer thing. I mean, I don't know. The beat-up Audi in Bahrain does it, but I don't know if I need it. But it was just one thing I noticed in the manual. It said you could do it, but you have to go to the dealer to get them to program it.
I think if you wanted to do that, and again, I'm just speculating, but probably one of those, those iCar soft, it's sort of like a sort of consumer level PIWIS system type thing where you can kind of do all the coding. Probably one of those things. If you really wanted that type of thing, you could probably buy one of those and code it in yourself.
Yeah, I had one. I've got one in my cart in Amazon. It was someone in Renlist was talking about it. I don't have it up in front of me at the moment, and it was apparently the one to buy that most Porsche owners buy. It's one of those readers. I've never bought it, but I did look at it at one point. I think we've probably covered it today, Steve. We didn't cover. I did want to talk to you about. I mean, because we're doing Porsche owner stories, I know we haven't covered a part of your story, and we were going to talk about that today, and we kind of slipped over it. We both forgot. We did sort of mention we're going to chat about it, but we didn't chat about it. But we'll do that in another episode. Maybe that works.
I'd ramble a lot.
Yeah, but maybe that one works with when we do the episode, which will be coming up about the perfect 3-car Porsche collection, and we can talk about that with the listeners. I think that might be an interesting way to lead into that and just cover your story that we haven't actually covered yet. Most people know mine. I've said it so many times now. People are probably sick of it, but yours we don't know, and I think people are interested to know about how you change from BMs and all these other cars to get into a Porsche.
Yeah, sure. No problem.
I think that's about it for the day. There was one other thing I just wanted to mention. People that own a 991, and I'm sure there's other brands that do this, but James at Auto Amateur, he, people that own 991.1s, I think, don't have Apple CarPlay because it wasn't available at the time. I don't even think it was an option. I think it was on 991.2. I'm not 100% sure about that, so don't quote me. But James does that Joy Auto CarPlay system for the PCM 3.1 and 4 systems, a wireless system. which I know he's installed on a couple of people's cars. He's done some videos on it. So if you go over to Auto Amateur on YouTube, you'll see James has got that mod for people that own 991s where you can just get the CarPlay in your system, which is worthwhile. I'm not sure if they do it for Android Auto. Maybe they do. I think maybe it does both. I'm not 100% sure, but just go over to Auto Amateur and you can see that. And like I said, James is going to be a special guest on the next podcast where he's going to talk about his Porsche story and everything else that he's been up to, which is a lot. What else, Steve? We done?
I think we're done, mate. Can't think of anything else. I could ramble on forever and
I think we'll save it for another episode, because we're at about an hour or so, hour and 10 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Thanks, mate.
Cool. No worries. Thank you. Have a good week again.
Yep, you
Stay
too.
Stay safe.
Yep. I'm off to Bahrain on Saturday, flying. I know people don't fly.
Oh, is it this Saturday?
Yeah, this Saturday morning. Unfortunately, they cancelled our flight. We had an evening flight. Now we've got the morning flight, so we have to fly during the day, which is a bit of a bog. But It's only a short flight. It's only a 6-7 hour flight to Bahrain, but it just means you've got to get up earlier in the morning. That's the problem.
But possibly a good time to get out of the UK, given what's going on now? Or?
Yeah, Nick kind of said that to me. I think it is actually. Natasha didn't want to go. We hesitated. Yeah. We actually changed our flight. We were supposed to fly last Saturday, but we're going back there for work, and obviously now. So, and also that's where we have our flight set up there. So, so we leave on Saturday. Bahrain's not great for numbers either, but it's not as bad as the UK, and people seem to obey all the rules there. So, I mean, in that sort of, well, you know what I mean. It's more like what the government says. People do it. Everyone wears masks, and it's not really a problem. So, but there are a lot of cases because of a lot of expats from India, etc. So,
anecdotally, like people are getting a lot more relaxed in Sydney as well. And I know our numbers sort of look better, but I don't know. It's such a funny old world, isn't it?
I mean, when it started in March, people said it'd be done in a couple of weeks. It's like, it looks like it's, nothing's going to change now. I think I even think 2021 is just going to be a write-off. I really do think it's just going to get worse and things are going to change even more. But we've got to be positive. We can't sort of be thinking about it too much. We still have to do what we have to do. But it's not good. It's not good, mate.
I just think your observations about what it's like in terms of in London, I suspect that when you come back to Sydney eventually, you probably sort of say some similar-ish things. It's just that we're probably slightly a bit more fortunate when it comes to the statistics and the numbers, but I don't think the situation changes that much.
The problem with Australia is they're trying for zero. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The UK is obviously not trying for zero. Other countries don't try for zero. But the fact that Australia is trying for zero, I think, is a mistake in itself. You know what I mean? Which is why Australian residents can't come back in. Their quarantine period of 14 days, I think, and how you've got to quarantine in a hotel is wrong. Like places like Singapore, you can self-isolate at home. You've got to do 7 days. Bahrain, we only have to isolate for 24 hours until our test results come through. We get tested at the airport when we arrive. If the test results show negative, it literally takes 24 hours through the app, then we don't have to quarantine. If they show positive, then I think we can quarantine at home, but I think they'd monitor you somehow. Otherwise, you can quarantine in their center, which is outside of Bahrain somewhere, outside of the city. I think Australia has to look at other countries and look at different ways to do it. I think they're so concentrated on the zero cases that it's gonna ruin the economy even more so than other countries around the world. Anyway, this is a Porsche podcast. We're not talking politics.
This is the COVID podcast.
No, people listen to the end of this going, what is he talking about? All right. Thanks, Steve. Thanks for doing it again.
Worries.
Thanks for all your insights. It's all very valuable, and everyone's really enjoying the podcast with us together on it. Are we done?
All good, mate.
All right. Thanks for listening, everyone. Bye for now.